Hello everyone. In this video I'm going to talk about operant conditioning. And operant conditioning is much more straightforward than classical conditioning. Operant conditioning is just learning based on reinforcements and consequences. So behaviors that are reinforced are more likely to be repeated, and behaviors that are punished are less likely to be repeated. It's pretty straightforward. Learning is strengthened each time that it's reinforced. So this little seal is learning to bounce this ball on its nose, and every time it does it, it gets a fish. So it's going to really be motivated to learn that skill and continue to do that skill in order to get that reinforcement. Edward Thorndike was one of the early researchers in this area, and he came up with this idea of the law of effect. And basically what it says is that behaviors that are reinforced, they're more likely to recur if they have pleasurable outcomes, and they're less likely to occur if they have unpleasant consequences. Makes pretty good sense. So behavior is learned based on its consequence. So Edward Thorndike actually studied cats, which is kind of interesting. He created these puzzle boxes for cats where the cat had to perform 2 or 3 different activities in order to get out. So it had to push these levers down here. There was a string inside. It had to push its nose on in order to get out. And of course, when I first put the cat in there, the cat just kind of was pretty angry and didn't do a whole lot. But then after a while, by accident, just from its pawing around in that cage, it figured out how to get out. And the next time he put it in the cage, the cat was much more efficient about getting out. And after repeated times in this puzzle box, the cat was immediately able to perform all 3 tasks and get out of there really quickly. And what Thorndike said that this demonstrated was that it proved actually that the cat had actually learned something. We can't ask the cat what they learned, but we know the cat learned something because the cat was able to get out much more quickly afterwards. So let's talk about reinforcers and rewards and why we use the term reinforcement rather than reward. And the reason is that a reward to one person is not the same as a reward to another person. So a reinforcer is a reward that we're sure that the person's going to like or the animal's going to like. If you've ever tried to train your dog and you were using treats that your dog didn't like, it's not going to work out too well. So a reinforcer is something that we're sure is going to be reinforcing to the person or the animal. So reinforcement is always positive, and it always increases the likelihood of the behavior being repeated. So a positive reinforcement is where we're adding something. We're adding a pleasant reinforcer after that behavior is performed that we want. So we ask our dog to sit, and then we give them a treat. We don't give it to them beforehand, or they would never connect the two. So positive means that we're adding something. Negative reinforcement is still reinforcing. So just remember that reinforcement is always reinforcing. But negative reinforcement is actually taking away something negative. So if you're trying to study and your neighbor's blaring their stereo next door, and you go over there and you ask them to turn down the music and they actually turn it down, that's negative reinforcement. If your car alarm is going off and you go and you get your key fob and you turn it off, that's negative reinforcement because you're taking away that negative sound that you don't want. And negative reinforcement also is reinforcing, and it increases the likelihood that you're going to repeat a behavior. Punishment, on the other hand, is anything that follows a response that decreases the likelihood that you repeat the behavior. So punishment is what we think of as punishment. So we know what punishment actually is. So you could get in trouble at work, you might fail a test, it might be spanking or timeout, or an electric shock sometimes in research studies that is used, jail time, a traffic ticket, all sorts of things can be punishment. And there are positive and negative punishments, but now also remember that punishment is always bad, whether it's positive punishment or negative punishment. So positive punishment just means that we're adding a negative stimulus. So spanking or yelling or an electric shock, those are all positive punishments, and they don't sound positive, but positive just means we're adding a punishment. Negative means we're taking away something positive, actually. So negative punishment would be a timeout, where you're taking away interaction with other people, taking away recess from kids, taking away a video game or a favorite toy. That is all negative punishment. So taking away something is negative punishment. And then there are also primary, secondary reinforcers when we talk about operant conditioning. So primary reinforcers are reinforcing all by themselves. So things like food, water, love, affection, all of those things are primary reinforcers. Secondary reinforcers are things that are reinforcing because we can sometimes get a primary reinforcer with that secondary reinforcer. So money, we can certainly buy food and water. I don't know about relationships with money. And for little kids, things like gold stars and tickets, they can earn prizes with those things. And so those are secondary reinforcers. So that's the beginning of operant conditioning. In the next video, I'm going to talk about B.F. Skinner and his research in operant conditioning and schedules of reinforcement as well as shaping.